Yeah, because that's kind of like where you're at is like, okay, then how am I like established as presence or as being? Because it still feels like you're kind of in and out, stepping in and out, and you get
Yeah.
drawn into it. That's where like setting up kind of like a breathing practice or some sort of like movement practice or walk, something that just allows you to connect. You'll notice that it's when you're present that you're not in chaos. But when you're not present, that's when the chaos is going and you feel like, oh, the day kind of gets away from you kind of thing. Versus
Yeah.
it's like, it's actually the opposite because when you're present, you're not actually trying to control anything, yet everything feels very calm and it feels like there's this capacity to meet everything as it happens without fear, without running from it. But when you're caught up in the mind, then you want to try and control everything. You're worried about everything happening later. You're anxious about everything happening later. You're fearful about what's going to happen later. And there's this feeling of, damn it, like, it's because I didn't ground myself this morning. I didn't, I've lost touch with being.
Yeah, and feeling that from just being around family too, and with Kate inside, like sometimes it'll be like days where it just feels really good, like went away on vacation and that all flowed nicely. It's like just sometimes there's like gaps in time where you notice the mind body kind of, that's what I explained, is kind of goes in and tries to make you either feel, it makes you feel bad for something, and it's like why it feels like you're so unsuspecting of it. Before you didn't notice it, so it was like okay, and
Yeah.
now it's like it really scratches at you. Like it feels like you're sitting there alone in the dark, and then something just comes out and is like, "Here, look at this." Like
Yeah.
distracting, but also what the heck's coming after you now.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
where it's looking at it, being with it, and then going one step deeper. It's like all these things, they're very superficial.
yeah,
And the mind just kind of like it throws you something that's actually not the cause of it. It will throw you like a distraction. It's like, here, look at this. And that's never the thing. But if you don't chase it and you continue to be present, then it's like something else surfaces and you still remain present and something else surfaces and then something else.
hmm,
So then it like takes you deeper and deeper essentially. And you're going deeper and deeper into subconscious that you're not able to actually be aware of. And that's where a lot of these like karmic seeds are actually, that's where they are. That's where they need to get essentially like burned or purified is by being that present with it, which basically the mind will pull you out of that presence. But it's when it's basically what needs it needs like the presence to be actually turned up. It needs to be like what it feels like you're just turning up this, you're very alert, you're very with it. Where that's that I said is the mind will kind of like, oh, here, like it's almost like get out of presence and it'll throw you something to distract you with. And you're like, oh, look, a shiny object, and you'll go do that. Meanwhile, it's diverting you from what's really here, what you're
hmm,
not wanting to see, what you're
hmm,
afraid of seeing. And that's where that's where a lot of relationship stuff, this is where it really where you start noticing it more and more. Oh, I can be present, super present, driving the car on the country road or just being by myself or walking the dog, no one's bothered. But it's when a relationship shows up that then it's like, or old friends, then it's like completely got lost presence, completely back to old patterns. And then
yeah,
you just lose it because it's so you're not seeing that there's still identification
yeah.
right there and that they're supporting that identity, but it's not
But
seeing
it's
it.
proof. I find it also shows you proof that you kind of that you're going in the right direction because of certain things like Easter dinner. It's like certain things arise or in a conversation I wouldn't notice that things like would bug me, but then now it'll come up and I'll be more playful with it. And there's nothing in the background saying like, I got to do this, or like, that second voice. Like in
Yeah.
real life example being this car, trying to get in a new car. There's been a lot of issues with it. So it's just constantly a topic
Mm-hmm.
for people around me, myself. So it's like, it comes up again and a family member secured their vehicle very fast. So it's like it's playful banter, but like that's sort of within a certain dynamic would kind of cheese me off. It would be like, oh man, I must be screwed up. But now, like, something like that comes up, and for me, it's just like, okay, let's
Yeah. Yeah.
throw a
Well,
line here.
it's just basically just watching it, just accept it, be with it, because
Hmm.
all that talk is mind.
Hmm. And it's sharing in that too, and so I put out whatever my response is not an attachment or defense. It's not a
Yeah.
I'm not trying to keep it going, really. It's
Yeah.
not even
Yeah.
about like, oh, this is gonna be a fun conversation. Let's hear all about it. Just to be
Yeah.
part of a joke or something, but
Yeah.
it doesn't
That's
need to. It'll go quiet and then it's okay.
yeah. That's always like, that's probably the hardest part is with like relationships and stuff. Cause the mind is basically, it's this drama that's happening. And as long as you're like, you love the entertainment, then you get glued to it. Oh yeah, you're like having popcorn, like watching it. You're so
Yeah, yeah,
involved
yeah.
in this cinema of the mind. But that's what everyone else is doing as well. Everyone else is the ego as well. It's like this collective ego. So all these other conversations, they love the drama. They just love the bickering and the gossip and the tell me get the good stuff on this person. They love it.
Mhm.
And that's the challenge. That's what it feels like you're almost getting tested, is because it's the pull of the negative energy.
Yeah.
It's the pull of like the negative. So it feels like it's like, oh, it's pulling me, but it feels like it's pulling you, but it's actually you're habitually giving it power. You're
Yeah.
giving your power away to it. It's not. It actually has no power over you,
Hmm.
but it's just so conditioned that you're giving it power. Where it's like that's the thing from some of those conversations, from some of the relationship stuff. It's like that's where if you can't get out of the relationships and stuff like that, then that's where the presence then needs to be turned up even more, because you have to basically see them, and you could say like create some of these boundaries within, but they're not even boundaries. It's a matter of just seeing the reactiveness of the mind to like in these conversations,
It's like
and just
jousting.
seeing where you usually like get drawn into it, and then it's like, yeah, I'm just feeding into this conversation, and it's completely just nothing but problems,
Yeah.
because
Well,
that's what most people talk about is just their problems.
even if it's not like problems, they're just looking for agreement is a big thing too, where it's
Yeah,
a sense of trying to find other people like-minded people. So it's just putting out a thought, saying, "I agree with this, and what do you think?" And waiting for it, and it either becomes an argument or it becomes more support for their own belief, and
yeah,
that's where
yeah,
it's like I don't really want to, because I'm trying to not believe anything. Or not
yeah.
trying, but just by being grounded, you don't have those things
Well,
happen.
when you're just grounded in that being, you'll start seeing that like the others kind of the others kind of mind or like ego is just kind of like, it's like feed me, but you're not feeding it. Because if you're not feeding your mind with your energy, you're also not feeding others' minds. So it's just like a bunch of like hungry dogs. And if you're in this conversation with five other people and they just want that, like, give me the negative stuff, give me the gossip, give me the problems. And you're just kind of, and to them, then there's this period of where they're kind of like, all right, if you're not giving me the food, they get kind of angry. Like, come on, just have an opinion, would you? Give me, get involved here. And it gets a matter of time where they just kind of get the sign and they basically just mark you off like you're boring. You're boring. And then, but it's because you're so used to what they're considering you're boring is actually you're peaceful. You're just not getting involved in the conflict. But that's the thing is like at this stage of having that always being drawn in and stuff, it's kind of like if you roll around with the pigs, you're going to get muddy. You just get pulled right into it. Right. But that's the test is basically it, because you're so used to that pattern being pulled into it. Can you remain present and watch those conditioned patterns pop up without empowering them, and see where they're coming from, See that they're coming from positionality. See that they're coming from just trying to get the juice out of an argument, get the juice out of being right, get the juice of talking about problems. It's like this negative energy that's what feeds the ego. So by not feeding it, essentially you're starving it, and it just gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and it literally can't survive in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
That negative, and that's why everyone's like, they hang around in these kind of cliques with like,
Well,
it all just supports it all supports each other.
I started daydreaming about that, like if the band, like if that vibration was kind of within the group that I'm currently in, what would it look like? And it's almost like it's hard to picture it because it's so up and down and one way or another, but you actually do feel like this local energy. And
Yeah.
when it kind of like you have less of it, or that you're taken by whatever you're in.
Yeah.
That's definitely
Yeah.
noticeable.
Yeah. You'll feel like you just get taken over by it.
Yeah.
But like I said, you're not taken over by it. You're empowering it.
Mm-hmm.
You're empowering it. And that's the thing, is sometimes with these things, these friend circles that you're in, because again, like, it's so new to you, the journey and stuff, you're most likely holding on to friends and stuff, these groups and stuff that you should have let go of. But if you don't want to see it, it's because you don't want to see it, and they create too much identity for yourself. So then there's this feeling like, I got to hold on to these people.
Well, some have to stick around.
Possibly.
A few events a year.
Possibly, but that's the thing. That's kind of, you'll just feel like there's just something that's kind of telling you like, all right, like less and less time, which then you'll be able to kind of like establish yourself in the presence. And then if there's a time to kind of reintroduce you to that group or come back in, you'll come in without losing yourself. Because that's what the kind of that inward journey is like, coming back to yourself. And it's like, okay. And then it's like, you get a taste of it, and now you're doing this dance in and out, but you're not established in it. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, then when you're established in yourself, then you can go back out into the world without losing yourself ever. And then the world completely changes, in the sense that it's no longer the world, it's you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, is that when there hasn't been that establishment, it's because of still old contractions, still identity, still these karmic patterns that need to be purified, that are creating that veiling of the true nature. These thoughts and feelings are like clouds that are covering the sky. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the sky is always there. Right. So that's what I said. It kind of feels like it's always like, here's a test. Where I told you before, is like, just treat it as a game. When you're hanging around some of these people, you just treat it as a game. Like, how can you remain still present? How can you see all of these patterns start popping up, I should say. And it's the key is, you don't beat yourself up when there's no, like, you don't keep score of this stuff. Just treat it as, if you say like, treat it as a life game, like for the rest of your life, then there's no like, like I'm behind on this, or I didn't get the goal today, or like, that's all mind stuff. It's not
that's
about,
exactly, it was hard for me to say like, go to see a progress in it or see a lesson. It's just like, that's every moment is just an experience.
Yeah.
You decide what happened.
And that's the thing, is because, so that in a sense is then your relationships actually become your greatest like spiritual practice. It's like, it's way faster to wake up with a relationship than it is to go like get lost in a forest or a cave and then renounce yourself from the world. It's way easier, because you're constantly getting this interaction where then it's like, it's creating all this kind of stir with the mind, and you're able to see it. It forces that awareness to get stronger and stronger, you could say. It doesn't actually get stronger and stronger. It's just, there's
less blockages.
It's just less blocked off kind of thing. But that's very much like the practice. Like that's where it's like, that's for myself, like same sort of thing. It's like I was just